Hello everyone, this is Grand Solar Minimum's Crazy Canuck coming at you from Saskatchewan, Canada. Let me introduce you to my little friend. These caterpillars came in and they only eat Canadian thistle. This is how nature takes care of everything. Was kind of looking at these thistles in my field. This spring it was cold, it was dry. Probably the driest spring that I can remember, and of course when it's like that you got your deep-rooted plants like thistles, sometimes quackgrass will come in, and the thistles in the field were just brutal. And then all of a sudden these little butterfly caterpillars come in here and they take care of the thistles. Meanwhile everybody else is out there spraying the crops trying to get rid of them. So that's just one little feature. I'm out crop checking today, and I was also told that these little guys will actually take out borage. We can see that one there, but I've got borage planted nearby as well, and they're not even touching it. As far as the bricks, the crop is sitting, it's still low, it's sitting about 7-8 bricks. The thistles are down at 5. The borage is around 6. So of course the insects are going to go for the lowest bricks plants first. I found a really good podcast that I will link on this video from Dr. Tom Dykstra from Dykstra Labs in Florida. I've met him personally several times, and he is the one who first said that, at least to me, or that I've heard, insects will only attack unhealthy plants. An insect will never attack a healthy plant. So in 10 years of checking crops, I have never seen anything that goes against that theory. So that's I'm going to carry on here and bring you along on my crop tour. So this is how they can really do a lot of damage to a thistle. They can take it right down to the stalk. And this little guy is just going to town on this thistle. Very happy to see this. And when you look across the whole field from the road, it just looks like a bunch of skeletons standing. So hopefully once they take out the thistles, and if we can get some heat, these crops will start catching up. They are probably about 2 weeks behind, and with the Grand Solar Minimum effect of early frosts in the fall, I'm just hoping that we can avoid that. But we shall see. We've been getting the rains, so we need the heat, and I will carry on to the next little feature that I want to show you. Here's a plant that's very common here, especially in the wetter areas. Horsetail. Now I dehydrate this and I use it in my teas. It's really high in silica, and silica is really good, from what I've read, to tie up heavy metals. So when you work this into the soil, if you've got heavy metals in the soil, it'll tie it up. If you're, like, I'm using it for a tea, so I'm assuming that it's going to tie up any heavy metals and flush them out of my body. So that's one of the beneficial plants that we have growing. And of course here's a lamb's quarters, very common, very widely known, very nutritious. I always take these top leaves and eat them. And use them as a salad. I just eat them raw. But lamb's quarters, another very common plant that can be used for food. Cattails, another one of the best survival foods that's found pretty much everywhere. So that's a few of the plants that I always keep my eye out for. And of course everybody knows the dandelion. Very common. It's probably one of the more commonly known weeds and its uses. The roots can be used for a coffee substitute. I call it a tea. leaves for a salad. The blossoms can be used to make blossom jelly. So yeah, food everywhere, and most of the conventional farmers are trying to kill it. This food is more valuable, especially during these times we're heading into. As the ground solar minimum starts taking crops out, you're still going to have a food source if you know where to look and what to look for. So here's a thistle that's just outside the field. And most of these thistles are untouched by those caterpillars. When a thistle doesn't have a field competition plant and is growing amongst all other plants that like unbalanced soil, their bricks will be higher. And the insects are going to go to the lowest bricks plants first, so they're taking out the thistles in the field and leaving the ones in the ditch alone. And they're only a few feet apart. Nature's awesome. So where the bricks on the thistles in the field are in that 5 range, 4 to 5, this one I just checked is at 9. So there's no way those caterpillars are ever going to come after this thistle when there's a whole field full of weaker ones, because the soil in the field is better balanced and produces a lower bricks weed. I don't know if anybody else out there has seen the same thing I have. Last few days people have been saying how hot it is and things like that, and I keep telling them it's not hot. It's only 22 degrees Celsius, and yesterday I think the top was 23 or 24. That's just a little bit above room temperature. It is not hot, but because of the waning magnetosphere allowing more UV in, it just feels hot because the UV is bitey. On your skin it feels like it's probably 30 plus Celsius, but nobody can actually put that together, and they walk outside and they think it's hot. So it's something that we really need to be aware of. I'm not sure when these people are going to wake up, maybe when they're getting a sunburn in January, but it's not hot on this day. And I've been checking for weeks, daily temperatures going back on the Farmer's Almanac site back to 1945. On this time of year, for probably more than 3/4 of the temperatures, it's been in the 80s, 90s, and touching 100 degrees Fahrenheit. This is not hot, but it's something to be aware of, that in the future we're going to be dealing with a lot higher UV. Yeah, so this field here might look like a real disaster, but when I started with this field, it was 100% scentless chamomile. And I was told that you cannot kill scentless chamomile with tillage. And this is one right here. This is scentless chamomile, and it took over this entire field. And its claim to fame, it likes moisture. It's got a fairly shallow root. So when you till it, it's done. It dies. Trust me. And I just noticed something here in the scentless chamomile, a little grub. Apparently he likes the weed better than the crop. I wonder why. Could it be the bricks? So this field has been taken from 100% scentless chamomile and has been brought into production. Now there's some wild oats, there's some volunteer wheat from last year. This is a white wheat. This is wild mustard. And the point is, if you take a look at this wild mustard plant, it's maybe a foot tall, a few little blossoms on top. Now in other fields where they continually try killing this thing with a herbicide, these things can get 2-3 feet tall and about 3 feet wide, and millions of seeds. So when the soil starts getting balanced, these weeds do not want to grow very well. And that's what you end up with, is these tiny little sickly looking weeds. And then, of course, the blossoms my bees are going to make honey out of. So it's a win-win. You get a better crop. You get some honey out of the deal. And I've got some they call pineapple weed. And this is really good for making tea. I use this a lot. And of course you got the different clovers. You got this clover, which the bees really like. There's a lot of very bee-friendly plants in a field. This is what I would call biodiversity. Nature working together with all elements. I'll get a crop out of this. I'll get honey out of this. The soil is getting better every year. If we can get the weather to cooperate, that'd be really, really good, because the weather is still your #1 limiting factor in crops. No matter where you live, always check out your surroundings. Where I live, there is all kinds of food just growing everywhere wild. Wildcrafting is a great way to augment your food supply. These are Saskatoons. They grow everywhere wild. Like, a lot of the back roads have been built up, so they've been taken out, but there's lots here. These are chokecherries. So there'll be lots of chokecherries this year. Amazing amount of food if you know where to look. This is a field that was really bad for quackgrass. Now, a lot of guys, they'd call it summer fallow. I don't summer fallow in the traditional sense. I call it more like a green fallow. I worked up the quackgrass, and then everything else comes in after that. Because every time you change something in the soil, different plants will grow based on the mineral makeup and balance. So I've got thistles, I've got the mustard, I've got lamb's quarters. Every plant will bring something different to the party. Smartweed. Smartweed, there's about 2 or 3 different varieties of smartweed that grow here, and their leaves almost have a peppery flavor to them, so they can be used in soups and stuff like that. Now, a little interesting factoid. This is a wild oat. You can see on the bottom, you can see the wild oat hull left from the seed that started. And how do I know it was a wild oat before pulling it out? If you look at the leaf, the leaves twist counterclockwise on a wild oat. So you look at this leaf here, that's going clockwise. That's an actual oat or a wheat. But a wild oat, when it first comes out of the ground, the leaves will turn counterclockwise. So you can very easily tell in a field if it's in this stage and you've got wheat, barley, oats planted. You can look at the top of the leaves. If they're going counterclockwise, you can get a pretty good idea how bad the wild oats will be. So that's just a little farmer knowledge. And when I'm doing my green fallow, I'm waiting for my target weed or target plant to get into a stage where it goes into reproduction, and I will work it and put all those minerals that have been utilized by the plants back into the soil for next year's crop. So in this case, I will be keeping my eyes on the mustard and the wild oats. When the mustard blooms and the pods start forming on the mustard, the wild oats will probably be at flag leaf and starting to go into reproduction. And at that point, I will put everything in the ground, and it'll be more or less blackish when I'm done, but it'll only be that way for a couple days, and something else will start growing. And in the final fall tillage, I'll do an actual deep tillage with the spikes, which will really help freeze out thistles and quackgrass, and this field will do very well next year. Now when I started this field, it was really bad for quackgrass and all kinds of nasty weeds, hard as a rock. And now you can dig in here with your fingers. When I started, you couldn't do this with a spike. You couldn't go into the ground like this. That's how nice the soil has become. So that's a little tour of this field. This is my version of summer fallow. And we'll carry on. Here's another example of chokecherries. This is after they've bloomed. They're coming on nicely on these trees. There's thousands of pounds of food that goes to waste every year because nobody picks it. And this has been like this for as long as I can remember. So all kinds of food available. Just got to learn how to can, freeze, preserve in some way. And with the food shortages that are going to be coming up, I think this fall, when all the numbers start coming in for the crop yields, it's going to be a shock to the system. So let's hope we're ready, because it's not going to be pleasant. So that's about it for the crop tour today. Hope everybody enjoyed that. And as usual, do what you got to do. Like if you like, subscribe if you haven't. Spread the word. Let's grow some food.